Thank you all for joining me up here. Okay, so we're going to start off. We don't have too much time, and I want to jump right in. So, Luis, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about when and why you decided to create the Trans Film Mentorship.
The when.
Thank you. The when would have been when I was looking for crew members for my film, something you said last night, and I wanted trans crew members, and I realized they're actually quite harder to find than you would think. And that's when I went to my wonderful producer, Jessica, and I said, we have to change this. We have to take matters into our own hands, and it's going to be up to us to make sure there's crew members for the next film. And so that's kind of what the genesis of the idea was. That's where we started.
Now, you've said this to me personally, and you've said it in interviews. You've spoken about this quite a bit. I want to understand this even more. You say it's not just about the stories we tell, but also how we tell those stories. And I would love for you to elaborate on your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of conversation about trans representation on screen, but what I don't see is a lot of talk about the people behind the camera. And to me, that's just as important as making sure that we're on screen. And I think it comes through in, Carmen's performance, for example. I think when you see her on screen, she's glowing. And she's glowing because there was a trans girl getting her dressed. When she sat in her makeup chair, there was a trans girl doing her makeup. She knew that there was a trans girl behind the camera. And she knew that when we looked out at that crew, there were dolls all across the room. Yeah. And to me, a really special thing is that you can get on set and we can be kikiing and we can be having our inside jokes, and the cis people have no idea what's going on. And we're like, you want to fuck with us? Catch up, because we're not going to apologize.
Exactly.
I love that. Now, this actually brings me to a question I want to ask you, Lucah. Now, I think we speak a lot about the importance of representation. We speak a lot about, the doors being opened and opportunities. And I think in the corporate world or from an outside perspective, it can become a numbers game. It can become a forward-facing conversation. But we don't talk about the benefit, like Luis just mentioned. What are the benefits? What is the perspective of not only developing a space that is intrinsically going to be changed by having trans people involved, but also how does it affect the product, the end product?
Yeah, great question. I think there's so many benefits, just like Luis said. I mean, when you have different voices behind a story, whether it's corporate, documentary, narrative, you're just going to get a slightly different experience, a slightly different take. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and actually we've been thinking a lot about this as we take on the Jackie project, is diversity asks, who's in the room? Like, we have POC people in the room, trans people, men, women, all those things. But inclusion asks, what are the barriers that are preventing those people from being able to speak up or actually creating inclusive spaces? Because it's not enough to say, let's just get diverse people on the project. We have to actually make space for those voices, for those stories, for those opinions in a way that includes everybody. So when we talk about the impact at a corporate level, I think there's huge possibilities for companies who are trying to be more both diverse and inclusive, but they do need some help, because we need to see ourselves in these stories. And as more companies are making more stuff, we need to see all of that. And it's not enough to just put someone diverse in the picture. We need to make sure that that's at every level.
Fantastic. This actually segues right into a question I have for you, Bilal. Now, you worked with Ronnie Ali as a equity and inclusion trainer for Sort of. And I think we talk about safe spaces a lot. We talk about fostering safe spaces. But I want to know from your perspective, from that experience, from engaging in that, what are tangible ideas and elements that we can integrate into set spaces that can be crazy and hectic, and sometimes bring out the worst in people. How do we tangibly change those spaces, and how was your experience?
I think one of the things I love so much about Ronnie's work is she always approaches these kind of trainings that can often feel like isolating to a lot of, I think, cis people in general, because it's asking them to kind of, dig a little deeper and kind of reckon with their own discomfort. Often I find like misgendering happens for me when people are like freaked out and they don't know, they don't want to mess up, and then they do, obviously. And Ronnie approaches it with such compassion, and there's a real conversational kind of aspect to the way these trainings are led. And I think that helps, like when we take the edge off of it and acknowledge that we're all humans trying to do our job and show up and be respected and loved and do good work. It's a pretty, at least so far in my very little experience I've had, it's an idea that most people can get their head around. And we talk about what happens to our bodies when we're uncomfortable. And often that's when you're in panic mode, or when your sets are so high stress and so much is going on, and you're more prone to maybe making mistakes like that because you're so focused on other things. I will also say it's not perfect. It's a real learning process. And each year we ran, equity training for our season 1 as well. And we'll probably, if there's a season 3, we'll probably adapt it again because we're still figuring it out. There's no one kind of model that's completely worked, because each year our crew changes too. So then it's different people,
Yeah, I think that when we talk about change in this industry and inclusion in this industry, it really does fall on the shoulders of those that are already facing barriers to make those changes. And I'm wondering, and this is a general question any of you can answer, about how we can tangibly, or elements that we can actually change in the industry to help allow for other sets, other creators who are removed from our experience also make those changes and take that weight.
Well, I think the trans mentorship is step 1.
Step 1.
And the beautiful thing about it is that Gabrielle and Anna are doing all the work. They are basically, you just need to ask them to be on set, and they have it all planned out. We made it so easy for you. So there should be no excuse why you're not running these things, right? And when you're thinking about trans people working on set, you have to be proactive in being like, what are their challenges going to be? Their challenge might be just having to go to the bathroom or not having the right washroom. That could be a challenge. And you just need to be proactive in being like, get that sign off the door. We did it at the Fern Resort. We did it at a public resort. All the people there were like, okay, I guess there's no men, female, well, just go where you need to go.
So it sounds like you're almost creating a formula, a system of how to systematically change these spaces to be inclusive. And it seems that, again, the work will fall on shoulders, but if that system is then applied to sets on a broader scale, so that the people applying it are not just us, hopefully there's a bigger change that's in order for us. Yeah.
And then the other thing is pay them, and pay them well. Pay them.
Yes. So speaking of barriers, we have the Trans Film Mentorship. We're all doing work to create a variety of expressions in spaces like this. But what are the actual tangible barriers that we're actually experiencing for trans folk to enter the industry and thrive there? Is there anything specific we can talk about?
Do you have something?
Okay, sure. A few things that come to mind for me are, honestly, one is confidence. I can speak for myself. When I was younger, I just felt like I didn't see any trans people taking the steps that I felt like I needed to take in my career, and that really did hold me back. I don't know how much that affects other people, or maybe it's less bad than it was today, but I can definitely say for myself, the fact that there weren't trans men winning Oscars or weren't those things, I felt like this isn't a career path for me, and I had no place there. And it's taken me time to build up relationships, build up my own confidence, make new relationships to feel like, okay, I've got that space. And then the other thing to remember, I think, in production is that it's not the most regulated industry, kind of like hospitality. So a lot of the time when we're looking to put together productions, we just say, well, who do you know? Or like, we need a DP on this, like, who does this person know? And then what ends up happening is the same people always get the work. Those same people are usually the ones that are most, I guess, most obviously front-facing. I mean, like, right now I'm planning a wedding and we're trying to find some POC vendors and crew, and it is really challenging because if you just type in wedding photographer, most of the people there, cisgender, white, straight people, right? So I think we have to bring that into our productions to say, let's not go with the first choice that we find necessarily. Let's be specific in who we ask and specific for what project, again, we're telling, because just back to my first point, it's not enough to just make all the actors diverse if the writer's room is not, if the director's not, if the DP is not. And of course, we don't necessarily have to have the entire crew be entirely representative of the project, but we need to make sure that we're thinking about those things just for everyone's ability to, come up in the world. Because again, when you look at DPs, let's say, who are very, very famous, they've got maybe 40, 50, 60 years experience. It takes a really long time, because of systemic barriers for other people to get to that level, and we need to give those opportunities.
I think that we have a similar understanding of that, because in my mentality, the barriers are trying to be changed from the ground up. But what actually needs to happen is the people at the top need to start making the changes, to do the work, to look beyond the obvious. Now, just to close, I have a question for all of us again. In the 90s, we saw a surge of Black creators telling Black stories with filmmakers like Spike Lee and Julie Dash, and we have a moment here where there's a bit of a corollary happening. I mean, we see it in the room today. And I just perhaps want to ask you a general question of what are your hopes? What do you see? What makes you excited about trans storytelling right now?
I think this panel is reflective of this moment for sure. The fact that we get to occupy leadership roles on projects. I'm an executive producer on my TV show, a co-showrunner, co-creator. Like, I wasn't going to do it if I didn't know that I could have a lot of control in how the thing is made. And we're working as directors now, and Janet Mock's got her thing going, and I think just more of that, because that's that top-down thing. Then I find that we're able to work in really particular ways when we're given the platform, and then the respect and are listened to when we say, like, why we were able to have the Trans Film Mentorship on our set this year was, like, I told my cis producers who I work with that I don't think I can go to work every day and not have more trans people on set, and then we were able to find the program. And anyway, so yeah, I think we just need to more of this, because it's changing the game, I think.
And it seems like the people who are now making decisions are sitting right here. And that's why we're seeing that change happen. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you. And a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.